community testing.
In your packet, there's a memo that describes all the milestones that we are adhering to in order to participate in the state assessment program. The materials have been received in the district. All of them are all coded with security codes. They're checked in, they're kept under lock and key. They've been delivered out to the schools where they're being sorted into testing groups at this time. I conducted a training of all of the school site coordinators on February 1st, and they have begun the process of doing the training for all test examiners at each school site. They started as early as February 5th at the high school, and will continue to next week. During these meetings, all of the procedures and protocols for testing are reviewed with the teachers. And that includes procedures for reporting any type of possible testing irregularity. They've been reminded that if there's a question, they need to ask rather than try to troubleshoot and resolve the question on their own. As I said, materials are kept under lock and key at each school. They're administered according to a very specific, very rigid testing schedule. It even includes scripts for administering the tests. And each school site has a calendar that determines what subtests will be given on each day. The testing window will be basically for the entire month of March, and all of the materials will be accounted for and leave the district on April 5th. Following the conclusion of testing, there is a student demographic data verification in May that we check to make sure that all of our information about students' gender, race, ethnicity, free and reduced lunch, ELL status, all of that is confirmed, as well as students' participation in the test. And we expect test results to be reported back in early July.
We do the verification because now, depending on state, depending on district results, will determine our district.
District performance index and school performance indices.
Thank you. The professional development update.
Also in your packet, there is a grid that gives you an idea of the activities that were held yesterday, February 19th, at our elementary, middle, and high school. This sheet actually is 2 pages, and the back is not included. There were a few additional sessions that were offered, including training for secretaries in Power School. But this captures most of what was going on. The major focus of the professional development yesterday had to do with curriculum and instruction, some collaboration between the middle school and high school, as that 6-12 coordination is one of the board's goals. Some time was allotted to that. We're looking at, we've already started a virtual professional development committee. We've been sharing resources about the legislative changes that affect professional development, as well as materials about best practices in professional development. The committee does have elementary, middle, high school teacher representation and administrator representation. Then they have a lot of work to do to act as resources for their peers to make sure that everyone is aware of information about professional development. Also listed on the memo are some of the major changes that we expect to be implementing. This is driven by state legislation, in particular both Public Law 10-111 and also Public Law 12-116, that professional developments be more small group and individualized, that they be coordinated around school and district improvement, that we begin to limit the use of large group conferences and workshops and rather invest that money in building collaboration and capacity within the district, using peers, teams, and departments to reflect on practice, developing data teams and communities of practice that can be conducted within the school day during available time, and developing collaboratives or subgroups of teachers who gain expertise and then mentor their peers or complete some specific task. We've had very good success with that this year at the elementary level with an elementary math collaborative where between 3 and 5 teachers at each grade level have been identified, and they've been learning very deeply about the Common Core standards in mathematics, as well as developing replacement units and lessons for teachers to implement in their classrooms. So this is a time where there are many changes in education, and even our most veteran and experienced teachers are learners. We're all learning together. There is a very positive attitude that we need to be informed about changes in curriculum, about state and federal mandates, about best instructional practices, and the best way to do that is to work together.
Thank you,
this topic here. One is I would like to know if it's possible if the teachers can, in their evaluation of how they perceive professional development, if they feel that it's positive, negative, neutral, and that leaves me in these tough economic times that we're in. What would it be, what's the feasibility of potentially eliminating a couple of these professional development days, either in terms of either changing those days to actual classroom days, or based on economics, if we can eliminate 2 or 3 of the professional development days, or whatever amount of days that they are, renegotiating our contract and seeing if we can get those dollars back. We're paying them for 186 days. Several of those days are professional development. Each day is worth X amount of money. If it's not the most productive and efficient days and resources spent, what would it be if you got a couple of days back as far as amount of salary that we potentially set?
You're talking furlough days.
Well,
Okay. You want to reduce the total number of days and get salary back.
right, and that being based on these days.
By law, the district is obligated to provide 18 hours of professional development, which is roughly 3 full days. That can be sliced and diced in other ways. There's a lot for teachers to know, and to be quite candid with you, some of the changes in the Common Core standards, curriculum, and instructional practices are making some teachers a little bit uncomfortable because they are changes from past practice, and everyone is in a position where they, just like their students, have to be continuous learners, they have to be lifelong learners. That's part of the teaching profession. And when you sign up to be a teacher, you have to stay current in your profession as an attorney or a lawyer or a doctor, with their profession as well. So there is a need. Some of the professional development that we participate in is mandated because of the school, particularly Torrington High School, for one being a focused monitored school. Some of the development that we do in literacy instruction is also mandated by state statute. So there are some things that we're obligated to provide, and then there are some things that we are morally obligated to provide to keep our teachers up to speed and providing the best possible instruction for our students. The kind of instruction, kind of education that we have today is not the kind of education that many of our teachers came up through, but it's preparing students for the future. And the world today, the economy today, and the future is different than it was when we were prepared as students. So there is change and growth that has to take place in the educational world, and professional development is the means by which we do that.
I guess, if the state wants to mandate it by law, then they should just pay for it. I mean, we're strapped here for money in this town, and all I hear is just, we gotta keep spending for this law, that requirement. I'm not positive how efficient any of it is, and unless they wanna pay for some of these things that may not be the most productive or efficient, I'd like to see us try and eliminate it and
There
save
is
the money.
teacher evaluation for every section that was offered yesterday. They do it at the end, and we can share the results of those evaluations with you. But also, some of the topics, it may be difficult for the teachers to accept and implement the instructional changes that need to occur with moving towards the Common Core standards. It needs to be implemented. And the expected outcomes for students is very different than what the expected outcomes for students were 5 years ago. So we need this time to get teachers to be able to talk about their concerns, to ask questions about their instructional practice, and to understand how they need to scaffold their instruction so that students meet those expected outcomes. And the other piece too is we have to change the focus from these students can't do it to what do I need to do as an educator in my instruction, in my practice? What am I failing to do? so that these students can learn. Not blaming the students or maybe their lack of learning, but am I not doing as a professional?
Not to be argumentative, but where is that, is this some type of federal or state mandate of the culture and changing of the educational philosophy of we don't say children fail, but we look to teachers fail. So when the student doesn't do very well, we're going to say, well, how did the teacher fail? Versus the old concept, which is the teacher taught and the student failed. Where is this concept, or is this just your philosophy, your cultural, as a superintendent? I don't know where this is coming from.
Yes, it is part of my philosophy, because as a teacher, as an educator, I'm a professional. Who would you hold in the other professional ranks? Your doctors, your lawyers, any person who's considered a professional out there. And they're responsible for the service they deliver, and they deliver it to their clients. You fail your client doesn't fail you. And then you don't get.
Sure. I don't know many doctors or lawyers who abide by that philosophy today. We live in a society that has little accountability by anyone, so I'm just kind of amazed that we would want to now start looking at teachers to actually be professionally accountable.
Who's responsible for the future of this country?
I don't know.
Teachers are, okay? Yes, families, but teachers are. We can make the greatest impact on children and the students in our classroom by developing relationships, by becoming better at our practice, and to say, okay, after you do a long day, go out and go to a college or something, when we can offer it during the time when they're here in the district, working together with colleagues. When you're a teacher, you don't have a lot of time to talk to a colleague and say, gee, I've taught this lesson today, and how's it working in your room, and how's it working, this is how it went in my room. All right, and so this is what this professional development allows, for that type of dialogue to say, how is it working, and what can I do differently? Or maybe you had, something that I don't know about this child that I could reach him better. So that's why we need the professional development. And now with the new way that the state is saying is that teachers will have more freedom to select the type of professional development that they would like to engage in. So it's a good thing. And then we have ownership for your professional growth.
I just have a question. It says nurses, nothing planned. Do the nurses get together as a group on professional development?
The nurses as a group, as you know, they're part of the, quote, non-certified staff, unquote, so they don't have the same schedule that the teachers do. They are scheduled to work the school year plus approximately 10 extra days through the year. They use those days. We met on November 6th and did 504 discussion on food allergies. They come in during the summer to prepare for school opening. They come in at the end of the year to prepare records to send off. So once they've exhausted those days that they're allotted, we would have to pay them additional. So in anticipation of their schedule this year, we were not able to bring them in on professional development days unless we paid them.
I'd like to address Mr. Nargi's point, but echo my support for the superintendent's viewpoint as well, that there's multiple studies that have demonstrated that having an effective classroom teacher is the biggest impactor to student learning in the classroom. I know as a former educator myself, that's the charge that you're charged with, is you are the educational leader in that classroom. And especially for kids who maybe first generation to this country, maybe not have experienced educational success before, having a teacher who is not only good at their craft, but is continually learning and changing as mandates and everything else come down, is kind of the driving force.
A remark and a question. The remark, I think, backs Andrew up. if we're gonna hold teachers responsible for teaching, we ought to hold students responsible for doing their part too. And I think sometimes we emphasize too much that the teacher has somehow failed, when really the student hasn't taken the responsibility they need to. But the question I have has to do with something you said in the process of responding to Andrew. You implied that a lot of our teachers, or some portion of our teachers, don't buy into the Common Core. Didn't you? Why?
Because it's quite different than the way that they were taught as students and the way that they were taught to teach. It's really focused on a very student-centered approach and a very outcome-centered approach. It focuses more on the application and use of knowledge rather than just the transmission of knowledge. It's not about covering a curriculum, it's about deep understanding of concepts.
And do you think that sometimes they would characterize their disagreement as that the Common Core lowers the standards that they used to be able to expect of students?
No, not at all. I think my impression from visiting the elementary work groups yesterday is that it's very rigorous, it's very high standards, and in many cases we're asking students at lower and lower grades to tackle with more complicated and more complex concepts than we ever used to. I don't want to imply that the vast majority of teachers are. I think teachers need time to understand and unpack the standards, to understand how the standards are going to impact not only their current curriculum and the current resources that they have access to, but also the changes that are going to be necessary in their instructional practice in order to give students these kinds of opportunities that will allow them to be independent learners. So, you know, it's a learning process, and it's difficult because there are people who have been teaching for many, many years, and now they're being called upon to make changes in their practice. And I think most of our teachers that I see are embracing that. Some of them are dealing with the angst that comes with any type of change and getting their heads around what does this mean for me in my practice, because lessons that formerly were used from year to year are no longer as appropriate in order to meet the demands and the expectations that are in the Common Core standards.
No surprise that the people at the presentations you go to say that it raises standards. Nobody is going to present a program that they would then say lowers the standards or diminishes expectations. I'm done.
You think they raise the standards?
Wait, you're asking me?
We have a teacher here who's actually on our math collaborative.
They absolutely raise the standards. They're absolutely a step above, I think, what's out there right now. Can I also follow up with one other comment?
Sure, go ahead.
Since you called on me? I think part of the problem with the teacher angst right now is that we're being asked to look at the Common Core, we're being asked to incorporate it in our classrooms, and yet at the same time, we're being asked to administer the CMTs, which is now a part of our formal evaluation. And I think that's caused a lot of, I'll use the word angst, amongst the teachers, because we're just teetering a fence right now between two things. And it's very hard to develop your classroom when you can't fully develop one thing or the other. So I think it's a transition year. I think it's a difficult year for a lot of teachers, myself included. It's very hard to cover both sides that I need to cover. And I think maybe once the CMTs are gone and we don't have that hanging over our heads, I'm thinking that a little bit more embracing of the Common Core will happen.
Thank you.
Put my 2 cents in. To go into to Andrew in your discussion, I think, if I'm correct, the way that Andrew was thinking, you had brought up doctors, lawyers, and that they have to be kept abreast and on top of everything. And the state does mandate that they do. Licensed plumbers, electricians, everyone has a certain amount of training they have to do. Unfortunately, they have to do it on their own. It's not during the course of their day. If they want to do something, they have to either go to a seminar or take time off from work. And on the flip side of it, I think the state, when they give us $27 million, is under the impression that they've paid us for it. So, I mean, it is a double-edged that, in the private world, you do have to go out and do that development yourself. But in the public world, I think the state would feel that the money they give us covers the 18 now.
Well, I think probably the teachers do keep up with what they see as important and necessary on their own, without being told or without having some reward presented to them for it, except their own personal satisfaction. I think probably they would also say, well, I don't believe in this. If you want me to learn it, you're going to have to mandate it and pay for it.
We in the private market say the same thing, but they don't really care what we think. You know, they give us rules and regulation changes every year, and we're not happy with them, but we are stuck with them. Okay. I already crossed it off. Power school services. I couldn't see it before. All I saw was the top of your head. Oh, he's bringing his own furniture.
Oh, well, just let me introduce these two. This is Steve Penzakowski. He's our systems administrator. This is Barbara Lukeski, who's our technology operations manager for Torrington. Power School, after looking at several options, and then we're looking for a change in the format right now. My recommendation and the recommendation of the IT department is that we go with Pearson's hosted solution for Power School. The reason why we chose that solution is that compared to what we're using right now, which is a hosted solution from CREC, which is the Capital Region Education Consortium, Pearson has access to a data center out in New Jersey from a company called Savis. It's a SAS 70 data center, which is highly secure. It has armed guards, video surveillance, all those types of security measures. It's used by several Wall Street companies to protect their data. Pearson's hosted solution will allow us the same level, if not more, or greater, uptime or access to our Power School product, as well as giving us access to something called ODBC, which is a database connector that we need right now that we don't have access to do our reporting and to pull data from Power School to our data warehouse that we run internally.
Is this going to allow us for future expansion?
It will. Pearson provides all the hardware for this hosted solution. They will upgrade the hardware and do all the work in the background to make sure that the product is always available. We don't have to have any concerns about hardware upgrades, software upgrades. That's all managed by Pearson.
What about speed or sign-on issues?
Sign-on issues. I talked to their sales rep earlier today about performance. He said there have been a couple issues with performance in the past that they've rectified. We should not expect any slowdowns with the product like we do now with our current hosted solution. And they use a number of servers to provide the product to us, and they can allocate resources as needed so that there should never be a slowdown in the performance of the product. And if there is, they promise 2-hour response time.
Looking at your cost summary, page 2. Do we currently pay that $14,758 as an annual license fee?
We don't. There's a number, if I'm thinking about the same sheet, of $21,000 and change.
Well, the first thing, it says license/subscription fee.
Yeah, that's what we currently pay, to license all the students for Power School. The $14,000 we do not pay. That is the cost through the hosted solution for Pearson. Now, currently we pay about $6,500 a year to have CREC host our Power School. The difference between, besides the functionality, that we would get, the advantages, the benefit we'd get from Pearson's solution is that we would also get their enterprise management services, which is their management of the Power School environment, includes all upgrades, includes backups of the data, backups both internally and to an off-site location.
I guess you just kind of confused me. The first thing, do we pay a license fee to Power School currently?
We do.
All right, and that's the $14,758 that's at the top of this?
No. It's $4.50, I believe, per student.
$450 per student?
Right. If we want to add the hosting solution, it's an additional $350.
Okay, so down the bottom, the $21,537 is what we currently
That's our-
pay.
Yes, we pay
And the
that on an annual
14
basis.
I'm sorry?
That's what we pay on an annual basis, regardless of whether we host it here or if it's hosted
Okay.
someplace else.
And the $14,758 replaces the $6,500 that we pay, correct?
Correct. It is more money, but we're getting additional benefits for that.
So it's a net of approximately $6,500 more in the district?
It's a net of $8,200 more.
Correct.
65 is what they're currently paying, and 14,700 is the
So $8,200 more to upgrade to get what you
So what we consider a more robust solution.
Mr. Chairman, dear members of the IT committee and my fellow board members, in your package you will find 3 pieces of information to review. The first part of your package that you will review are the top threats to cloud computing. They go through just some of the general concepts, everything from Microsoft being taken offline with their new Office 365, to Amazon going down, taking down Netflix on Christmas Eve, along with a host of over 70 other companies when it brought down Roku. So it's lovely to know that the hosting services work. It's also lovely to know that we can have no part in it and still have it go down, because they're hosting somewhere else. It is not hosted at Pearson, it's hosted at a large capacity site. Also goes through the easy ways to go through and hack the information and get into the systems, as is described in the instances for Bank of America, Chase, and Wells Fargo, and a host of others. So before we start looking around, I might do a little more research on this and start really looking at what is the cost of putting things on a cloud system not hosted internal to the district. As we start looking around, we've lost the touring company. We've lost Fial. We've lost Turner and Seymour. I mean, we're losing major bases for income for the city and the school district. We start looking forward to this, now we're outsourcing. Now we're guaranteed to spend $15,000 a year. Okay, that's 15 grand. Now what's it gonna cost next year? What's it gonna cost the year after that? Now we need more robust systems. We go back through the Power School requirements, which is your second piece, you'll find that over the last 4 years, they've increased their requirements threefold, year over year over year. So what started out as a single core system now has to be a dual 6-core system to meet their requirements for being productive. You'll also find the fact that on the last page of it, Pearson themselves discuss the fact that by going to virtualization, you lose a 20% hit in performance by virtualizing with their systems. So whatever we get, we already know we're gonna take a hit on it to do it. Now, we've had issues with Power School for a long time. In fact, we're sitting now with over 100 kids having to do an individual review at the high school because according to Power School, they haven't attended class, so now we have to go back manually. And this is costing us a fortune for people's time because, well, system wasn't up, this was down, that was going on, network access froze, a host of problems. I'm tired of putting Band-Aids and saying, well, okay, it's the best we can do for the moment. I'm not willing to accept or spend any more taxpayer money on a system that, oh goody, We've been hosting it for the last several years, and it hasn't worked. Let's continue to host, we'll just switch the hosting, and maybe that'll work. Well, how much taxpayer money are we gonna waste between now and then? How many students are gonna have to go through the hassle of, okay, am I gonna pass this class, am I not? Do I have to go through and wait for somebody in guidance to review this, make sure I've done this? How much staff time is being wasted? Do we need to add 3 more staff members for this? This is getting ridiculous. I don't see a point at this juncture to doing anything except, let's take a serious review. We have an RFP coming out for tech services. While we do that, let's take a look at a real RFP for what it would be to bring this in-house so we can get a system here. So the only point of contact is the high school. Everybody contacts here, same as they do now. There's one point of failure, the high school. The systems are in-house. If there's one point of failure, we know exactly what's going to happen. We know where it's going to be, we know when it's going to be up, we know when it's going to be down. We know what the redundancy on it is going to be. We know how much the district has spent, and we have no long-term ongoing costs other than general power upkeep and system replacement for CPUs that burn out or memory. And most of that you can get maintenance contracts for significantly less. So I would caution everyone to read through the material at this point and not do anything until we have a better handle, and not just continue down the same path that hasn't worked before, so why should we assume it's going to work in the future?
This is not an action item, it's just a receipt.
This is just information.
As recently as today's Wall Street Journal, there were 2 articles on breaches of security. Exactly the
Yes.
sort of thing you were talking about.
Yes,
It's here,
it's,
it's real, we have to deal with it, prevent it if we can.
yes, and the easiest way to prevent it is to have it in-house.
Because if we're doing a good job of teaching computing to our kids, right?
You're creating the next hacker.
That's what it falls
So,
on.
a little less professional development there and a little less. Yes, Jerry?
I was just gonna say, how do you know that having it in-house is safer than these 171 companies that were hacked by, by the Chinese military in this report that he's referring to?
Well, all right, let's start with the easiest one. What data does the Torrington Board of Education have in-house that the Chinese military is going to want to have in Power School? You asked me a question, I'm asking you one.
I don't think
Please
there's any.
answer.
I don't think there's any.
Okay. Now, you're hosted in a data center along with another, let's just assume they're a small data center. So let's say they've got only 500 companies there. And you've even said in your report to this committee at the beginning that there's Wall Street companies there. Out of curiosity, what do you think the Chinese government might want with a Wall Street company?
I don't think they want anything with the Wall Street company as much as they want military information.
Now, see, I would have sworn that the report was talking about them hacking the Wall Street Journal, General Electric, Sikorsky. I believe they were referring to General Motors.
Trade secrets is what they were
Yeah.
talking about in the journal this morning.
So they're going through, they're looking for information and data. So anywhere you have a manufacturing company, development company, engineering company, Wall Street company that may have a proprietary piece of software that goes through that might be a better way to look at the markets. Anything like that is probably going to be a primary target, wouldn't you think?
I would. I don't think that our student database would be,
But our student database is part of the hosted solution. So when they crack the
It's-
hosted solution and they get access to all the companies at the data center, and we're part of those companies, what happens to our data?
what happens to our data? Data's available, I suppose.
Okay, so our data's available, they've downloaded it, same as they did with the rest of the people at the data center. And we're sitting there going, well, gee, what do they want with Torrington? Absolutely nothing, but it was part of the data center. So we took the system. That's the point.
Vincent? Chris? No? Does,
I would, I mean, he makes a lot of valuable comments, but what would you like for the board and the administration to actually do as far as?
What I would recommend is we bring in a secondary company to take a look at what it would be to bring in a real Power School solution for this district, for hardware, the software required, put it together in an RFP and send it out to bid for the hardware involved, so we can get an actual number. That way there, we know what we're looking at. Previously, the district has done business with a company out of Rocky Hill, the Ergonomics Group. That group has provided the hardware and the consulting services to the district. So they've consulted on the system, then they provided it, and they've gotten under the guise of State of Connecticut contracting. Well, if you're supplying the consulting services for the design of the system, and you're supplying the hardware, chances are you're going to be in a very strong position to decide when you're going to need the next hardware upgrade. Whereas if you hire a company to come in, do the evaluation for what you need, then go out to bid and not allow that company to bid on it from a hardware standpoint, chances are you're going to get a real evaluation. You're not going to get something that's partially tainted. So I'd be very leery about that. My recommendation is going to be to look at figuring out what the best hardware requirement is. What would take us through 8 years with this system? How much hardware would we need? Then go out, spec out the system, send it out to bid. We'll have a response back before the end of this school year. We could have a response back by the end of this budget cycle. Know exactly how much it is. And then we're set for 8 years with hardware. All we have to do is keep the software up. And Power School runs on Apache, which is free software. All we need is the database to run it on. It runs as a web service.
How long are we under contract at our current host?
We are not under contract right now.
All right, so we're just on a month by month at this point?
Correct.
So we have a place to keep it.
We do have a place to keep it, yep.
I'd like to say something.
Please.
Being in charge of Power School for the district. There's one point that I'd like to rebuttal
Oh, please.
with regards to the attendance issue, whereas you have 100 students under review right now.
More than 100.
More than 100, doesn't matter, the number really doesn't matter, and that you have someone in this sense, and I'll clarify why I say that number doesn't matter. We have an issue at the high school, which I am majorly involved in, whereas we have a procedure issue with the teaching staff right now not understanding how to take attendance, not just how to take attendance, but understanding the concept that after a certain amount of time, they time out of Power School and they think that they're doing something and they're not. And I am individually addressing this with each and every single teacher that is having this issue, which is affecting the number of students in that class. So for example, period 2, which is in most cases the extended period of the day for THS, after 120 minutes, that would be from the start of the school day. If the teacher's coming in at 6:30, 6:45 in the morning, they're logging on to Power Teacher until, let's say, I think it's 5 after 9, the period ends. I could be wrong, could be mistaken, but around that time, you've exceeded 120 minutes, and the teacher still thinks that they're on, and they're trying to take attendance, and they're la la la, and they hit submit, and they go back to the Power Teacher sign-on, not realizing that they did not take attendance. And that is a bulk of the research that the guidance department, because I'm working with the person in charge of that, is running into. And then on top of that, you have the teaching staff, which I had sent out an email at the beginning of the school year, and I had the support of Steve, our network manager, install Firefox, because that was recommended by Power School that we use, that we get away from Internet Explorer and go to Firefox. And we sent that out, and we still have some teaching staff who are not familiar on how to use Firefox, still using Internet Explorer. which causes the drop-down menus not to work in Power School, and they cannot take attendance. There are other factors as well that are coming into play as far as attendance goes, but it's not something that I would rather, discuss openly in a board meeting. So I hope you respect me
I understand.
in my confidentiality
As
of
chair
that.
of personnel, I understand.
But I want you to
entirely.
know why there's so much work going into, it's not a Power School issue. It is a end user issue and a training issue, which I am addressing individually as this. And I can tell you on a weekly basis, I'm averaging maybe 1 or 2 teachers a day. And that's just at the high school.
But isn't it a Power School problem to the extent that they're not told that they can't do what they want to do?
They have been told in
No,
several.
The program itself lets them do it, and only after they've done it tells them, in a way they don't understand, that it hasn't worked.
And yes, I agree with you in that. There are 2 sides to Power School. There's the administrative side, and then there's the teacher side, the Power Teacher side, it's called. On the administrator side, it does tell you when you time out, and I have it set to the max, which is 120 minutes. And it's a security feature. A teacher could walk away from their desk and still be logged in, and we don't want to take the chance that a student's going to go to a teacher's computer and use Power Teacher to do anything.
I understand.
On the Power Teacher side, yes, there is an issue. I have an actual open case with them to send some kind of alert that they're going to time out, or that they've already timed out, because you don't have that within Power Teacher. However, with that being said, I have sent out several emails on how to refresh the screen on the computer so that they know whether or not they're still in Power School or whether they've timed out. Because and it's just a simple F5 key, the refresh screen. And if you hit that, and if it just refreshes the attendance page that they're on, they're still logged in. If it comes back to their sign-on, they've realized that they've timed out and they have to go back in.
So the administrators get a warning, the teachers don't?
Correct.
Oh. Okay.
And that's a Pearson program issue. And again, I've already opened up a ticket for it and hopefully get it enhanced.
Barbara,
Yes.
may I ask you to attend our next personnel meeting? This was an issue that I brought up during personnel before the end of the last school year, during the summer, to make sure that the teaching staff was well-trained on this.
Yes.
Because last year, we had to suspend our attendance policy, because after last year, the teaching staff was unable to do this. So we were insistent on the fact that part of the professional development for teachers before the start of the new school year was that they knew how to take attendance in Power School.
I did.
Obviously, we're still having issues.
Yes.
So I would like to invite you to come to the Personnel Committee meeting
Okay.
to discuss how we can put together a better required professional development training day for Power School for the staff members.
I would be more than willing to come, but I'm
Thank you.
not sure if you're aware of the fact that a week prior to school beginning, I had purchased a piece of software that allowed me to literally sit there and show teachers and staff how to log into Power School, how to use Power School. I've done cheat sheets. I've given all these copies to Bill so that he had, Bill.
But again,
But
that's why I
I'm
wanted you to
saying,
come to personnel.
I'd be more than willing to, but I want you to realize, and I want the board to realize, that IT has gone above and beyond in training. I've done, again, presentations in PowerPoint and cheat sheets and everything possible, that you could think of in trying to train staff. I've gone individually to anyone who has emailed me, and I've gone either in the morning, afternoon, either in the morning before school started or in the afternoon, when school is over, to sit down with the teachers. And if it's something immediate, I have gone out of my way and say, okay, I'll be there in a few minutes. And I've gone to classrooms, and it's not just here at the high school, it's in all the schools.
But that's why I'd like you to
Yeah, no,
come,
not a problem.
because we need to address what the fundamental cause of that particular issue is.
Dan, could we meet someplace where we could have this demonstrated to us, or
Oh.
is this available to us at Midgeon Avenue to run through?
Yeah, we can do it at least now.
Yeah, okay. I'd like to, because it doesn't sound like rocket science,
No.
but it's a problem.
So,
And then there are, you know, and just so you hear all sides too, is that there are some teachers who really just, it's like, you know, using this.
I know.
And
And many teachers do a wonderful job with this and do follow the procedures accurately, so.
Andrew?
If you're going to have this little get-together, maybe a teacher would want a teacher. I hear both sides, so I would like it that this would be open to those teachers who
Oh, it's open
would
to the
like.
public.
Well, I mean, you say it's
Personal.
open, but however you reach out to the teachers, make sure they have a good opportunity, because I've heard for a couple of years, just.
The opposite.
It's not that they're antagonistic, they just think that it's not a very effective mechanism for doing a lot of things, and it's the software they're saying. So, you know, I mean, you're saying one thing and.
Yeah, it's not it's not saying that the IT department, it's the software is difficult to manage.
Yeah, they just don't find it efficient and effective. That's their perspective. Now, you're giving another perspective that it should, in your eyes, and maybe your eyes are much more capable of figuring
You
this
do
out.
realize that I was hired not knowing Power School
Okay, I
at
don't-
all.
okay.
And and most of this has been self-taught and actually sitting down with a teacher and actually problem solving. I've had the Power School University within the first month that I was employed here. However, I didn't learn what I know from Power School University. I know what I know based upon the problem solving and sitting down with the teachers and actually training them and doing what needs to be done. And I hope you realize that.
But there's a large portion of us in the population that don't get that. So, I mean, unfortunately, you can't get rid of a good teacher because they don't
No.
understand software. I mean, I'm not a software person myself. I mean, that's beyond what I can do. So you have to understand, you know, some people get it and some people don't. That's why.
The comments that I heard were, it doesn't work for what the district actually wants it to do. Those are kind of a quote. So whatever that means, I'm just telling you, the district wants, administration wants certain things to be able to be done in this program. And when people who are competent at using computers say it just doesn't work. That's what I've heard over the last couple of years. So,
I guess I'd have to have a better understanding as to what the district is looking for. I mean, I know
Well, I
what
think Ms.
individual, well, I know what individual administrators may want out of Power School, but when you say the district, that's kind of vague to me. I'm
Right.
sorry, it's very vague to me.
Would you like to make a proposal? From I think a procedural standpoint, this is it's kind of a management issue as far as, we have a team through the superintendent that they have an IT department and they are recommending something or informing us of what they're doing. If we have a fundamental problem with what they're doing, we can ask them to reassess it. But as far as how they house it, if it goes badly, I mean, we have to evaluate people based on the performance of it. If it goes well, you'll get your pat on the back, but, I mean, we have to, you know, as a group right now, we've discussed it. Do we have a direction that we want to go? A consensus or what?
I propose finding out what it would be to bring it in-house, not outsourcing it, not putting it on a cloud system, bringing it in here, hosting it on our own servers internally.
Do we have sufficient concern on the board about the cloud?
I'm concerned.
Are you concerned about the weather?
To whether or not to be concerned about the cloud, Ken.
I don't either.
I'm not saying I don't support, I think more information you get about anything you're gonna purchase, that's great. But I'd still like to deal with this more immediate problem. which is the ability to take attendance.
Well, but that's not the issue at hand right now. I mean, I understand that, but I'm saying, right now, we're talking about where we're gonna host this.
Okay.
So, I mean, do you have concerns about it being on the cloud? Would you like to have administration look into bringing it in-house?
I think what I'm trying to get, though, is I want to know if this thing can actually work the way our team suggests it can work. If it can't work, then I think we should definitely blow it up and go in a different direction. But if this thing could actually work the way they believe it can work efficiently, and we can get it working, that should be part of our consideration of whether or not we're going to go in a different direction.
Well,
I think we're talking about
Yeah,
two different.
Yeah, I understand what, yeah, I
well,
understand.
right now, we had a contract with CREC to host it through January 30th or January 1st.
January 30th, I believe.
Sometime in January. That contract has expired. We have to, in the interim, we have to do something with this. Whether it's Power School or not Power School, or if there is another manufacturer, I mean, there may not be another software writer, we would have some type of system similar to this. Do we want it in-house, or do we want it outside? Do we think that that's our prerogative to make that decision? Or do we think that's an administrative decision? That's the question that I'm asking right now, is, I mean, do you have a concern with it being outsourced?
I support what he's saying to get
Get a second,
more facts
get
and
more
see.
information?
Yeah.
That seems to be the consensus. Okay, see,
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, it's, I don't think there's any harm in, getting more information. I mean, some of the information that we've pulled together based on some recommendations that we had, suggested that we'd be looking at over $100,000,
But it's
to
a
bring the services
one-time
in-house.
exposure to $100,000, not a yearly exposure to an ongoing expense that will only go up, not down.
We don't,
when you
We don't know if
put a
there's-
proposal together for in-house, can you put a life expectancy? I mean, what's the average life expectancy of a computer?
it depends. I mean, I've talked to some friends of mine that, work for a large corporation. They replace their servers every 2 years. Other, entities might wait 7 years. It all depends on what your policy is.
I would go by the manufacturer, ask them, give me a price on this, and what's the expected lifespan?
Right. We also have to consider the added power, cooling.
Right, it's
Yeah,
not gonna be a
It's-
small
yeah, it's
expenditure.
not.
Right.
An industry standard for technology is anywhere between 3 to 5 years.
Okay.
And to channel Paul, he would be now saying we should be thinking lease rather than buy anything, which wouldn't be the problem, would it? It'd be the same thing.
It'd be the same thing whether you leased it or purchased it, we're just,
It would be here where we had control over.
yes,
Exactly.
we'd have our own darn cards outside. Thank you.
Thank you.
Teacher sick days data, Kelly Services, is that Bill? Let's get it all over. Was that a new handout today?
That's a new handout today that just went around.